The desperate plea. The Zalari Council chamber trembled as another distant explosion lit the horizon through the crystalline dome overhead. Ambassador Villani's four arms gestured frantically as she addressed the assembled representatives, her iridescent scales flickering with distress patterns that needed no translation. The Corvin hegemony has taken 3 more systems, she announced, her melodic voice cracking with exhaustion. 17 billion souls enslaved or worse. Our fleet is down to 30% capacity. The holographic representatives of 12 allied species flickered in their designated spaces around the chamber. One by one they delivered the same message that had echoed for weeks. The Etherian Collective regrets that our non-intervention protocols prevent assistance. Hummed the geometric form of their representative. The Bathari Federation's fleet remains committed to protecting our own borders, growled the lupine ambassador. The synthesis cannot spare vessels from our core worlds, chirped the insectoid Klaxi speaker. Each refusal struck like a physical blow. Villani watched her people's last hope evaporate as their supposed allies retreated behind treaties and excuses. The Corvins were too powerful, too ruthless. Better to let the Zalari fall than risk their own worlds. There must be someone, whispered Junior Counselor Thren, his young voice barely audible. In all the galaxy there must be someone who would help. Check the old databases, Villani ordered desperately. Even the restricted sections. Any spacefaring species we haven't contacted. Hours passed. The explosions grew closer. Then Thren's scales suddenly flashed brilliant white, the pattern of shock and disbelief. Ambassador, I found something, but... He paused, rereading his display. There's a species called humans from a planet designated Terra, but it's classified as a Class X death world. The warning labels are extensive. Villani pulled up the file. The images made her secondary heart skip. Terra's surface was a nightmare of extremes. Frozen poles, scorching deserts, vast oceans filled with predators. The atmosphere contained oxygen at levels that would be toxic to most species. The gravity was crushing, and the humans themselves, they evolved as persistence predators, she read aloud, capable of pursuing prey for days. Exceptional pattern recognition. Highly social with pack-bonding instincts that extend even to other species. Warning, approach with extreme caution. Ambassador, the military advisor interjected. Contacting a death world species could make things worse. They might side with the Corvins or simply conquer us themselves. Villani looked at the tactical display showing Corvin ships approaching their homeworld. What do we have to lose? The quantum communicator took 3 attempts to establish connection with Terra. When the screen finally resolved, Villani nearly severed the link in shock. The human who appeared filled the entire display with his presence, not through size, but through an intensity that seemed to radiate through the screen. Admiral Marcus Chen had skin marked by scars, eyes that tracked movement like a predator, and when he smiled, he revealed teeth that evolution had never quite robbed of their carnivorous heritage. Ambassador Villani, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that triggered every danger instinct in her species. We received your distress signal. 17 billion enslaved, you said? Yes, Admiral. But we understand if your people cannot? Chen's expression shifted to something Villani couldn't read. Ambassador, you just told me 17 billion sentients are suffering under tyranny. The only question is how fast we can get there. Sending coordinates now. Wait, Admiral, we haven't discussed terms, payment, what you want in exchange. Chen's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. Payment? Ambassador, where we come from, when someone calls for help, you answer. That's what makes us human. You focus on evacuating your civilians. The Third Fleet will handle the rest. The connection ended. Villani stood frozen, unsure whether she had just saved her people or doomed them. Around the table, the other counselors erupted in debate. How many ships do they have? Demanded the military advisor. 6 days later, they got their answer. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. 8 vessels against the Corvin armada of 200. The Zalari military command went silent. 8 ships. They had doomed themselves by calling upon primitives who couldn't even muster a proper fleet. The Corvin commander's message crackled across all frequencies, his chittering laughter translating into every language. The mighty Zalari call upon 8 tiny vessels for salvation? How amusing. I will destroy them slowly so you can watch your last hope burn. Admiral Chen's response was brief. All human vessels weapons free. Remember the Alamo Protocol. Make them regret ever leaving their homeworld. The 8 human ships accelerated toward the Corvan fleet at speeds that should have torn them apart. No shields raised, no evasive maneuvers, just a straight line toward an enemy that outnumbered them 25-1. "Admiral," Villani transmitted desperately, "you need to retreat. You can't possibly—" "Ambassador," Chen interrupted calmly, "you asked for help. Now watch what Deathworlders do to those who prey on the innocent." The human ship spread into a formation unlike anything in Zalari tactical manuals. Instead of a battle line or defensive sphere, they moved like predators Villani had seen in Terra's database. Wolves, they were called. Pack hunters that isolated and destroyed prey many times their size. The first Corvan volley lit space with enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. The Zalari Council watched their scanners in horror, waiting for the human ships to disappear. The energy cleared. 8 human vessels continued their approach completely unharmed. "Impossible," breathed the military advisor. "Nothing can withstand that level of—" His words were cut short as the humans returned fire. The reckoning. The Corvan commander's compound eyes dilated in disbelief as his tactical display updated. Where his massive volley should have left debris, 8 human vessels continued their approach, their hulls glowing with dissipated energy but intact. "All batteries. Concentrate fire on the lead vessel," he commanded, his translator struggling with the pitch of his anxiety. "Maximum yield." 200 Corvan ships focused their weapons on the human flagship. Space itself seemed to tear as beam weapons, plasma cannons, and antimatter missiles converged on a single point. The light was so intense that several Zalari sensor stations automatically shut down to prevent damage. When the glare faded, Admiral Chen's ship had not only survived, it was accelerating. "Interesting," Chen's voice came over the open channel, conversational despite the chaos. "Your energy weapons are about 40% more efficient than our simulations predicted. Maria, update the absorption matrices." "Already on it, Admiral," came a female voice in the background. "Want me to return the favor?" "By all means." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human vessels didn't fight like any known naval doctrine. They moved in seemingly random patterns that suddenly revealed themselves as coordinated strikes. They would appear to retreat, only to loop back at impossible angles. They fired weapons that bypassed shields entirely, somehow destabilizing matter at a quantum level. But it was what happened during the 3rd hour that truly broke the Corvan fleet's morale. "Admiral," the Corvan tactical officer's voice shook. They're leaving their ships." "What?" On every screen, the impossible played out. Human soldiers in nothing but armored suits were launching themselves through space toward Corvan vessels. No shuttles, no pods. Just beings in suits carrying weapons flying through the void between ships exchanging fire. "They're insane," whispered a Corvan sub-commander. "They're actually insane." The first human reached a Corvan destroyer. Using magnetic boots and cutting tools, the soldier carved through the hull and disappeared inside. Within minutes, the destroyer's weapons went silent. Then its engines died. Then it began firing on other Corvan ships. "They're not insane," Admiral Chen corrected over the comm. "We're human. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We hunted megafauna by chasing them until they collapsed. We survived ice ages, plagues, and each other. You made one mistake, Commander. You threatened innocents under our protection." More Corvan ships fell silent, taken from within by boarding parties that seemed to treat the vacuum of space as a minor inconvenience. The humans didn't just defeat systems, they turned them against their creators. Every captured vessel immediately began attacking its former fleet. "Retreat!" the Corvan commander finally screamed. "All ships emergency jump!" "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Chen said. "You see, while you were focused on our ships, our infiltration teams deployed quantum interdiction mines throughout your formation. No one leaves until this is finished." The commander's response was untranslatable, a sound of pure terror that needed no words. "However," Chen continued, "I'm prepared to offer terms. Surrender unconditionally. Release all slaves. Dismantle your military infrastructure. Accept human oversight for the next 50 years. Or we can continue this demonstration. You're only 8 ships. Yes, and you've lost 43 vessels in 3 hours. Would you like to see what we can do when we're actually trying?" The silence that followed seemed to stretch across the galaxy. Every species monitoring the battle held their collective breath. Then one by one, Corvan ships powered down their weapons. Surrender, the commander managed. Terms accepted. The aftermath shifted galactic politics overnight. The 12 species that had refused to help the Zalari suddenly found themselves faced with a new reality. A species from a death world had answered a call for help without hesitation, defeated a superior force, and then offered reasonable terms instead of conquest. Within days, requests for defensive partnerships flooded Earth's communication channels. The Etherian collective suddenly discovered their non-intervention protocols had exceptions. The Bathari Federation found resources to spare for humanitarian aid. The synthesis offered technology exchanges. Ambassador Vellani stood beside Admiral Chen on the observation deck of the human flagship, watching Corvin ships being retrofitted as transport vessels for freed slaves. "I don't understand," she said finally. "Your species has the power to conquer the galaxy. Why help us? Why help anyone?" Chen was quiet for a moment, watching the stars. "There's an old Earth story," he said. "A man sees a child drowning in a river. He could walk by, it's not his child, not his problem. But he jumps in anyway. When asked why, he says, because I could hear them calling for help. That's it? That simple? The galaxy is vast and dark, Ambassador. Full of predators and prey, the strong and weak. Humans decided long ago that we'd rather be something else. The ones who answer when someone calls for help. Not because we have to, because we can." Vellani's scales shifted to a pattern of deep respect. "The galaxy called you Deathworlders. They were wrong." Chen smiled, and this time it didn't seem predatory at all. "Oh, we are Deathworlders, Ambassador. Death just isn't the only thing we bring. We also bring hope to those who've lost it, protection to those who need it, and absolute hell to anyone who threatens the innocent." He turned to the communication officer. "Signal all Earth nations. Tell them we need more ships. I have a feeling we're going to be getting a lot more calls for help." As the message went out, every monitoring station in the galaxy received the same transmission from Earth. "To all species hearing this, Earth stands ready. If you need help, call. We will answer. No conditions. No exceptions. The monsters in the dark should know. Humanity is watching. The age of isolation was over." The Deathworlders had arrived not as conquerors but as protectors, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Corvin commander's surrender had been broadcast across all frequencies, but Admiral Chen wasn't finished. As the defeated fleet powered down their weapons, he opened a channel to every ship, station, and world within range. "This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Earth Naval Forces. Let me be crystal clear about what happens next. Every slave will be freed. Every conquered world will be liberated. And if any Corvin vessel attempts to harm a single prisoner during this transition, we will demonstrate why Earth's oceans ran red with blood for millions of years before humans even discovered fire." The threat shouldn't have been effective. The humans were still outnumbered 20-1 by the surrendered fleet. But something in Chen's voice, a certainty that transcended mere confidence, made every Corvin crew member's exoskeleton rattle with instinctive fear. On the Zalari homeworld, crowds had gathered in the streets watching the battle on massive public displays. When the surrender came, there was no celebration, only stunned silence. They had witnessed the impossible. "Ambassador," Counselor Thren whispered, his scales shifting through patterns of awe and terror, "what have we brought to our galaxy?" Before Vellani could answer, a new ship emerged from hyperspace. Then another, and another. Within minutes, 47 human vessels had joined the original 8. But these weren't warships. They were marked with symbols that the translation matrix identified as Red Cross, Crescent Moon, and Solar Circle. "Corvin Fleet. This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the Earth Humanitarian Corps," a new voice announced. "We're here for the prisoners. Any vessel that cooperates fully will receive medical aid for their own wounded. Any vessel that resists will answer to the Marines." The next hours revealed another facet of human nature that would reshape galactic understanding. The same species that had just demonstrated terrifying military capability now moved through the Corvin fleet with equal parts efficiency and compassion. Human medics treated Corvin wounded alongside freed slaves. Human engineers helped stabilize damaged life support systems. Human counselors, being specifically trained to heal psychological trauma, began working with survivors. Admiral Chen invited Ambassador Vellani aboard his flagship, the UEN Tennyson. Walking through its corridors was a study in contradictions. The walls displayed art from across Earth, paintings of peaceful landscapes next to weapons lockers, Poetry about love inscribed beside tactical displays, photographs of human children adjacent to battle commendations. Your ship is confusing, Vellani admitted. We're a confusing species, Chen replied, capable of great violence and great kindness, often in the same moment. That's what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons or our strength, but our choice in how we use them. They entered the bridge where the tactical display showed the ongoing liberation efforts. Hundreds of thousands of slaves were being transferred to the humanitarian vessels, where they would receive medical care, food, and most importantly, freedom. Admiral, his communications officer, announced, "We're receiving priority messages from the Galactic Council. The Etherian Collective, Bathari Federation, and 9 other species are requesting immediate diplomatic contact with Earth." Chen's smile was sharp. Now they want to talk. Put them on hold. We're busy, sir. Lieutenant, we have 17 billion people to liberate and repatriate. The politicians can wait. The young officer grinned. Yes, sir. Putting the Galactic Council on hold. Vellani couldn't help but flash amusement patterns. The most powerful governmental body in known space, and the humans simply put them on hold like an unwanted sales call. Over the next several days, the liberation continued. But it was a conversation Vellani overheard that truly helped her understand humanity's nature. She was passing the medical bay when she heard a young human medic talking to a Corvan prisoner. I don't understand, the Corvan clicked, his translator struggling with the concept. Your admiral says you're predators. Your history confirms it. Yet you heal us, why? The medic, barely past what humans considered adulthood, paused in treating the alien's injuries. You know what the difference is between a human and a monster? She asked, what? Choice. We choose to be better than our nature. Every day, every moment we choose. Today, I choose to heal. Tomorrow, if you threaten innocence again, I might choose differently. That choice, that's what makes us human. The Corvan fell silent, but Vellani saw something change in his compound eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or fear of a species that could consciously choose between mercy and destruction. On the 4th day, a situation arose that tested human resolve. A Corvan battlecruiser, the Hegemon's Fist, attempted to self-destruct rather than release its prisoners, nearly 3 million souls aboard. The human response was swift and terrifying. A single human, Sergeant Thomas Tank Williams, launched himself from the nearest ship with nothing but his armor, a plasma cutter, and what the humans called pure determination. He carved through the cruiser's hull, fought his way through 200 Corvan warriors, and manually disabled the self-destruct sequence with 17 seconds remaining. When asked how one human defeated 200 Corvans, Williams simply shrugged. They were between me and innocent people. That was their mistake. The footage of Williams' assault spread across the galaxy within hours. A single human, moving through corridors filled with enemies, unstoppable and relentless. It became known as the Deathworlders March, and did more to cement humanity's reputation than any fleet battle could. But it was the aftermath that truly shocked observers. Williams personally carried wounded Corvans to the medical bays. The same hands that had torn through their ship's security now gently tended to their injuries. A week after the battle, the Galactic Council finally received their audience with Admiral Chen. The assembled representatives of 43 species waited as the human admiral appeared on their screens. Behind him stood not just human officers, but freed slaves from a dozen species. Including several Zalari, Admiral Chen, the Etherian representative, began. We wish to discuss formal diplomatic relations between Earth and the Galactic Council. No, the single word sent ripples of shock through the assembly. I don't understand, the geometric being fluctuated. It's simple, Chen explained. You had the chance to help the Zalari. You chose not to. That tells us everything we need to know about the Galactic Council. Earth will maintain diplomatic relations with individual species, but we won't legitimize a body that allows genocide through inaction. This is highly irregular. So is letting 17 billion people suffer because it's politically inconvenient, Chen interrupted. Earth stands ready to help any species that calls for aid, but we do it on our terms, not yours. The Bathari ambassador growled. You cannot simply ignore the established order. Watch us, Chen replied flatly. We're Deathworlders, remember? We don't play by your rules. We survived a planet that tried to kill us every day. We sure as hell don't need your permission to help people. Before the council could respond, Chen continued. However, we're not unreasonable. Any species that commits to mutual defense pacts, real ones, not papers that you ignore when convenient, will have Earth's support. Any species that preys on the weak will learn why humanity spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. And if we refuse, the synthesis representative chirped. Chen's expression didn't change. Then next time you call for help, you better hope someone else answers. The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council in chaos. But across the galaxy, smaller species, those who had lived in fear of powers like the Corvan hegemony, began sending messages to Earth. Not to the government channels, but to the publicly listed humanitarian organizations. We need help. Our people are dying. Please, we have nowhere else to turn. And from Earth came the same response to each. We're coming. Hold on. The transformation was remarkable. Within 3 months, human vessels were seen throughout the galaxy. Not as conquerors, but as protectors. They evacuated colonies from natural disasters. They stood guard over vulnerable worlds. They hunted pirates with the relentlessness that had once chased mammoth across frozen plains. Ambassador Vellani found herself appointed as liaison between the Zalari and Earth, a position that gave her unique insight into human nature. She watched them play with Zalari children, teaching them games from Earth. She watched them mourn their fallen with rituals that seemed to honor both warrior and poet. She watched them love and laugh and create art even while maintaining constant vigilance against threats. We're not perfect, Admiral Chen told her during one of their many conversations. We've done terrible things to each other throughout our history. Wars, genocides, cruelties that would shock you. But we learned, we grew, we chose to be better. And now we choose to help others make that same choice. And if they choose wrong? Vellani asked. Chen's expression hardened. Then they learn why Earth's children are named after predators. The final proof of humanity's impact came 6 months after the Corvan surrender. The hegemony, under human supervision, held its first free elections. Former slaves voted alongside their former masters. It should have been a bloodbath. Instead, under the watchful eyes of human peacekeepers who treated violence from either side with equal severity, a new government formed. The newly elected Corvan Prime Minister, a former slave, gave a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. The humans taught us something we didn't understand. Strength isn't about domination. It's about having the power to destroy and choosing to build instead. They could have annihilated us. They chose to free us, all of us, even from ourselves. But perhaps the most telling moment came when a young Corvan approached Sergeant Williams, the human who had single-handedly stopped the hegemon's fist from self-destructing. "Why did you save us?" the young Corvan asked. "We were your enemies." Williams knelt down to meet the youth's compound eyes. "You know what my daughter asked me before I left Earth? She asked if I was going to fight monsters. I told her no, I was going to stop people from becoming monsters. Including ourselves." The Corvan youth considered this. "Are all humans like you?" "No," Williams admitted. "Some are better, some are worse, but most of us try to choose right when it matters." "How do you know what's right?" Williams smiled. "Easy. We ask ourselves, if someone was doing this to the people I love, would I want someone to stop them? If the answer is yes, then we act." As the story spread, more species began to understand. Humans weren't just warriors or protectors. They were a species that had weaponized empathy itself, turning their ability to understand and feel others' pain into a driving force for intervention. The Galactic Council eventually reformed, this time with Earth holding a permanent seat, not because they demanded it, but because every smaller species insisted on it. The new charter included something that had never existed before: a mandatory mutual defense clause. An attack on one was an attack on all, and Earth would ensure it was enforced. Admiral Chen retired shortly after, returning to Earth to teach at the Naval Academy. His final speech to the galactic community was brief. "We came to the stars expecting to find the unknown. Instead, we found people in need. Some will call us Deathworlders, monsters, or predators. They're not wrong, but we're also healers, protectors, and friends. The choice of which one we are depends entirely on who you choose to be. Choose wisely." The age of human intervention had begun. Pirates found themselves hunted across systems. Slavers discovered there was nowhere in the galaxy to hide. Tyrants learned that their armies meant nothing against a species that had turned suffering into strength. But children across 100 worlds also learned new games. Artists found new inspirations. Scientists discovered new perspectives. Love found new expressions. The humans had indeed brought death to the galaxy. Death to oppression. Death to abandonment. Death to the idea that the strong could prey on the weak without consequence. In its place, they brought something far more powerful. Hope. And in the Zalari schools, children learned a new phrase in the human language, one that would echo across generations. We answer the call. The galaxy had asked for allies. The Deathworlders had given them something more, a promise that in the darkness between stars, someone was always listening for cries for help, and they would always answer.